Okay. I apologize for this being so late. My tutoring went over a little bit, but in addition to that, I just recorded this and there was a technical difficulty and it completely erased it. So I am attempting to do this again. Today is March 15th. As promised, I'm going to cover some material that will be beneficial for the student social studies test tomorrow. So let's get started. I'm going to read you a couple of narratives, and all the information will be encompassed in the reading. Alright, if you ever see a group of islands surrounded by a large body of water, you're probably looking at what? You guessed it, an archipelago. For example, Hong Kong is an archipelago. Now, imagine how it would be to live in a desert. You would probably be very hot and thirsty, right? Right. But did you know that some of the largest deserts in the world are found to the north of the Himalayan mountains and the Tibetan plateau? That's true. This is probably because the tall mountains block the rain and moisture that could come up from the south. Makes sense, right? Now, many people that live in these deserts would probably like to see some beautiful rivers. Wouldn't we all? Well, although some rivers are beautiful, keep in mind that they can also cause problems if they flood all the time. I don't know if y'all remember last year. Well, I'm sure you do. We had a series of floods of our own here in Georgia, and it doesn't even compare to the type of scale of the floods that I'm talking about. For example, with rivers like the Wang He. That's why they call it China Sorrow, because it floods so much and kills so many people. I once even went to the Ganges River for a family trip. Oh man, that river flowed through India and Bangladesh all the way to the Bay of Bengal. Needless to say, that was a very fascinating trip. But again, when you look at rivers like the Wang He, these are the type rivers that can cause a lot of damage, as it does in China. Speaking of China, I remember in 2008, China was awarded the Olympic Games. Well, it was an honor for China, of course, but so many athletes were concerned about going over there because of the air pollution. Air pollution could really affect an Olympic runner. I mean, just think about it. Their breathing is extremely important. Now, what's the reason for all this pollution? Well, one of the biggest reasons is how they use coal burning power plants for energy over there. And then China's people also need a good source of hydroelectric power, which is why the government chose to go ahead with the Three Gorges Dam project along the Yangtze River. But let's keep in mind, air pollution is not just a problem in China. It's also a problem where? In India. The population there is growing so fast, and what comes along with a growing population? Well, you have a lot more cars. That causes urban areas to have a huge problem with air pollution. Even in the rural areas, though, where people cook a lot, they cook over wood and they use coal fires, that contributes to the air pollution problem. Now, India has tried to improve its economy by developing more industries along the Ganges River. That can be good and bad. Well, there's positives, of course, because they're developing more industries. But it can also be bad because all those factories really pollute the river when they dump all those chemicals and waste in it. This is not the only problem for the Ganges River. They also have the Indians have a continued tradition of cremating their dead into the river. Now, this is a tradition that's true to their heart, but of course you can imagine that also causes pollution. Now, let's talk about climates. The Vietnamese climate is warm, it's tropical. This is obviously a good thing, especially to them because they get to grow so much rice there. Vietnamese is known for its rice. Now, India has a lot of monsoons. That brings so much wind and rain to the region that it can be very harmful. China's climate is kind of like when we were talking about economies, a mixed economy. Well, China's climate is a mixture of a lot of different climates. That means it can be hot, it can be rainy, it can be dry, etc. Now, all throughout Europe, or Asia, excuse me, some countries have a lot of resources, but some don't. Well, that's the same everywhere. You got your haves and you got your have-nots. But even though Japan doesn't have a lot of natural resources, it still has a very good economy. We all know what just happened with Japan with the tsunami, and I heard them saying on the news that if anyone can be prepared, for lack of a better word, for such a travesty, is Japan. And again, they don't have a lot of natural resources, but they do have a good economy. Once I went to Indonesia. I went to see all of the thousands of islands that it has. My tour guide told me that it also has the world's fourth largest population. I never knew that. He also told me a story about these farmers in Japan that were able to grow crops even in a mountainous area. How do they do that? Well, they built these farming terraces along the mountainous slopes. This was a very interesting story. Finally, I'm going to leave you guys with a little conversation about religion. As we know, people have been divided over religion for a very long time, and there are many different religions that exist. Hinduism, for example, is one of the world's oldest religions. They read this sacred book called Vedas. They also believe in karma. What is karma? Well, basically what goes around comes around. A person's actions will eventually determine their fate. They also believe that a soul will be reincarnated until it lives a good enough life to be reunited with Brahman. Another religion is Buddhism, founded by Siddhartha Gautama. Now, they believe that people can truly be happy if they could only give up their selfish and greedy thoughts. Wow, imagine if everyone felt that way. Buddhism and Hinduism both have a belief in reincarnation. Now, when I was in Japan, it was explained to me that Japan is the country that started Shintoism. Shintoism is a belief in spirits that exist all around you called kami. Now, the Muslims believe in 5 pillars. These 5 pillars stress things like eating healthy, being good to people, and even taking a pilgrimage to Mecca if you can afford it, and also praying 5 times daily. Confucianism is it's not necessarily a religion, it's a belief, it's an ideology that basically just reinforces people to have good character and treat others with respect. As you can see, although religions are different, they also have many similarities. Again, I just spoke to you in story form, but everything that I talked about are things that's necessary for you to know for your test. So just hit the rewind button, watch it again, and I will see you soon. This is SuperLearning123.